Floor crossings, intrigue, Chinese intervention, Michael Ma, Tim Hodgson, all of it coming together in one big melting pot. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, joined by Sam Cooper from the Bureau to chat about this. Sam, I wanted to reach out to you again. We spoke last, I guess, about a month ago on a different matter. We were chatting about Ryan Wedding and Canadian drug cartels and all of that. Now I wanted to reach out and talk to you about the whole issue around floor crossings, because I'm taking one view on it, you're taking another. My view is, you know, my view doesn't mean that yours is false or vice versa. Two things can be true at the same time, but people are really concerned about what's going on with floor crossing. So let's talk about Michael Ma. Were you shocked by what you heard just about a week ago?
First of all, I was shocked, but I would agree with you. Two things can be true at once, and you're so deeply sourced in politics, business as well. I follow, underground economies as they connect with business and politics. And my expertise on Chinese foreign interference is the interests of Canada's business class and the Chinese Communist Party can come together, and they come together very well in the Liberal Party of Canada, I find. But as I've reported based on CSIS documents, the Chinese Communist Party supports candidates in all major Canadian parties and did in the 2019 election. These are facts people can read in the Bureau. So when I saw that Michael Ma, this Conservative MP from Markham Unionville, crossed the floor to give Carney within, one seat of a majority, I was, well, let me say I was shocked but not surprised, because that riding is the center of the major foreign interference operation from China. Again, this is proven in the last election when Paul Chien had to step down for telling a Chinese Canadian media group that Joseph Tay, the candidate from Hong Kong, the pro-democracy activist, Paul Chien, said you could turn him over to the Chinese consulate. He later said he was joking. Joe Tay didn't think he was joking, but here's the key. We could talk for a couple hours on what I know about how China uses complex operations in Toronto. Joe Tay wanted to run for that Markham Unionville riding. He did a lot of organizing work. At a certain point, the Conservatives chose Michael Ma. Now that I've seen Michael Ma cross the Liberals, I can rely on my previous knowledge and findings that Michael Ma was very close with pro-Beijing community associations. So the thoughts in my mind are, maybe the Chinese Communist Party pressured the Conservative Party to back off after Aaron O'Toole lost an election and to soften their stance. And maybe the Conservatives wanted to choose someone that was a little bit more friendly to the local Chinese power brokers.
And so my understanding is that Michael Ma had wanted to run for the Conservatives in one of the Don Valley ridings, which is north end of Toronto towards Scarborough, still a large Chinese community, and that they asked him to go and run in Markham Unionville, which they had held under Bob Soroya. Now, you've documented, the Hogue Commission documented that Bob Soroya is someone who was followed by Chinese government officials in, I believe it was 2019 election. Is that accurate?
2021, and let me explain
2021.
this for
Okay.
1 minute. So, based on senior sources in Aaron O'Toole's Conservative Party, as we know, Aaron O'Toole was targeted and lost in 2021. After that, prior to the Hogue Commission, in conjunction with my sort of exclusive reports for Global News, I learned the Conservative Party was told by CSIS, this is according to senior conservatives that I can't name, that Bob Soroya was followed by Chinese agents during the 2021 campaign.
And
And
it is in the Hogue Commission report.
there are elements in the report, including that the Chinese consul general had reached out to Bob Soroya with strange messages, basically saying, "You've come to some of our community events. Have a good life after this election because you won't be back." Right. So look, Aaron O'Toole, when Paul Chien's controversy broke, Aaron O'Toole who I can talk to and interview, posted to X. He said that rioting was one of the worst for foreign interference. O'Toole believes it was one of the top three impacted and flipped, meaning he believes that the Liberals got it with the Chinese Communist Party support, which fits in with what I was told by people on O'Toole's team that said voter suppression was happening to Bob Soroya. And so, look, it's an absolute hotspot of foreign interference. Does that mean that Michael Ma is somehow under influence? I'm not asserting that. What I'm asserting, and I broke a news story today for the Bureau, is that uh, along with some Chinese language researchers, we discovered Michael Ma is part of this group called the Canadian Chinese Conservative Association. It has no affiliation to the Conservative Party. But when Aaron O'Toole lost, they held a very strange press conference saying Aaron O'Toole should step down because of his anti-China stance. So a lot of different stuff goes on. But look, Michael Ma being a director in that association that pressured Aaron O'Toole to step down, pressured Pierre Poilievre to step down after the recent election. I can read all of these reports. Michael Ma being part of what is clearly a strange pro-Beijing association doesn't look good now that he's crossing the floor to the party that clearly Beijing favors and the leader they favor, Mark Carney.
So, look, as I said, Michael Ma had run for the Conservatives under Andrew Scheer in 2019. Now, I'm not saying Andrew Scheer is, in any way favorable to Beijing. Uh, but maybe he skipped Aaron O'Toole because he didn't like his position on China. But Michael Ma does come from Hong Kong, and his most recent householder. If people don't know what a householder is, that's the flyer that you get from your local MP telling you, what they're doing and how great they are. Just like a hymn sheet, really. Um, it arrived in people's inboxes today, and folks sent it to me. And among it is that he is dealing with the Hong Kongers. And Michael Ma is from Hong Kong. He is not mainland Chinese. So a lot of people who are originally from Hong Kong have a different view of mainland China. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, Joseph Tay is also from Hong Kong. He had a Hong Kong bounty on his head. So, as you know, the Chinese Communist Party and its security state have taken over Hong Kong. There's sort of a diaspora battle line set up around Toronto. Most recently, the people that support, Beijing's government, I would say, are the stronger diaspora voter sources. So with Michael Ma, it would get very complex. There could be people that are pro-Hong Kong democracy that think he's on their side. There could be people from the pro-Beijing side that think he's on their side. What I can tell you, Brian, is I have all kinds of Chinese language media reports showing Michael Ma meeting repeatedly with senior, what are called Fujian community leaders, which are the acknowledged power brokers. If you talk to your Conservative Party sources up high, they'll say, these people that Michael Ma is meeting with, you can't just turn them down. Bob Soroya didn't just turn them down. You have to go to those meetings, but the point is, how far do you go? Michael Ma, in the recent months, went to a meeting of what's called the Chinese Confederation of Toronto associations. Its leader has shook hands with Xi Jinping at Beijing United Front Work Department meetings. Its leader is the subject of Chinese CCP police station investigations. And so it's not a good look when you're even if you claim to be for Hong Kong democracy, that ship has sailed. There's no democracy there anymore. And if you're meeting with
Jimmy Lai has just been convicted.
He's been convicted. There's no free courts there. It's a kangaroo court, and so the pro-Beijing power brokers, look, let me put it this way. The Globe and Mail and myself also broke stories during the election about Paul Chien's replacement, named Peter Yuen, former Toronto deputy police chief, going over to Beijing for a People's Liberation Army commemoration parade, very high level event with these same power brokers that are now meeting with and surrounding Michael Ma. So it's like, does any of that prove that Michael Ma, is under some sort of secret pressure to jump over to Mark Carney's more Beijing favorable party? No, it's not proof. But him being directly on the board of an association that pressured O'Toole to quit because of O'Toole's tough on China stances. Look, I think any reasonable political analyst would say there's something to look at there. At least there's something for Michael Ma to answer.
And I have not said that anything that you've reported or others is incorrect. But let me put it to you this way: Occam's razor. Most simple solution is often the most likely.
Yes,
Uh, Tim Hodgson represents the riding of Markham Thornhill.
yep,
That is right next to Markham Unionville. Tim
absolutely.
Hodgson is a big business guy.
Yeah.
He cut his teeth at Goldman Sachs, at, all these big companies. Um, so did Michael Ma in a very different way. Michael Ma was on the IT side, but very much the executive. He wasn't your help desk guy. Let's put it that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Michael Ma was the guy leading major IT infrastructure projects. Tim Hodgson leading major buy-in projects, leading major investment banking. As he put it, Mark Carney is a former business guy. I'm a former business guy. Michael Ma is. We're all pragmatists. The way it was described to me, and this is by someone who does not discount the issue of Chinese foreign interference in that region at all.
Hmm.
In fact, the person that originally called me about this and said, you need to look into this angle, is someone who would say Chinese foreign interference is a scourge and needs to be dealt with in Canada. And what they said to me was, it looks more like a Brookfield Bros play than a CCP play. That Hodgson and Ma kept running into each other because they both represent Markham. And so if you're an elected official, well, you're getting invited to the same parades, the same community events, the same mayor's breakfasts, and you're going to see each other. And that eventually Hodgson was just like, hey, we've got a better pool. We've got a nicer pool. The water's warmer. Come jump in. It's great here. You're gonna like it better than with those other guys. Um, is it possible that that is what drove this as much as anything else?
I think we're going back to me agreeing with you that two things can be true,
Yeah.
or the theory you're hearing could be the correct one. The open source evidence I'm looking at could be correct, but on a lower level. But look, two
I
things
mean,
come to mind.
look, my guess is he's probably feeling pressure within the Chinese community for sure.
I think, the open source records I look fit Michael Ma into the pool of people that I have a CSIS document that says this was a few months before the 2019 election. It says the Chinese Communist Party is calibrating its sophisticated support for candidates across all three major parties in order to hedge its bets. That's a real quote. And the goal of it, if you remember this, the crisis, Mun Wanzhou, the Huawei lady in chief, is in jail in Canada. China wants to spring her out. So they're going to show their displeasure to Justin Trudeau for the temerity of, going through the motions of, the US extradition. And they're going to shift some support to the Conservatives. Michael Ma, as you said, wanted or did, wanted to run for the Conservatives. I've got a picture of him standing there with what I believe are suspicious Chinese community leaders and NDP candidates, Liberal candidate Sean Chen, and you got a few Conservatives. So he could fit into the bucket of those people that in a complex way, wittingly or unwittingly or semi-wittingly, do have community support. And I'll add this on the business side: Hodgson, Mark Carney, Dominic Barton, uh, you know, any number of business leaders in Canada could be in sort of the what I call the Canada-China Business Council crowd, which is all about, let's increase trade everywhere. We're agnostic. The US is getting tough on us. Let's increase trade with China. But, there's a new book that just came out called Under Assault that says the Canada-China Business Council is a creation of China's United Front Work Department. So a Hodgson can be unknowingly sort of, in that let's just increase trade wherever it is, and Beijing can kind of be cozying him along. Let me add one more thing. Hodgson's director of the Liberal Party of Canada Electoral District Association for Markham Thornhill is a former member of the Jiangsu Chamber Council, which, if we've talked before, this is the business group that meets with Mark Carney prior to the election. Globe and Mail break the story. Mark Carney denies the meeting happened. That group shows its favoritism for Mark Carney to the community. And I know a lot more about the Jiangsu Chamber, including, let's just call them politicians that came up in the Hogue Commission being tied to that body, it being tied directly to the United Front Work Department. That's the leader of Hodgson's Riding Association was connected
So
to that.
what can you tell me about this group without getting either one of us sued? And this is what people always say. Why won't you just tell us everything? Uh, because there are libel laws in Canada, and if you
If they
say
knew
things you
how
don't have
many
proof for,
active
you can get
laws
sued.
If they knew, Brian, how many active lawsuits that I believe are strategic lawsuits are going on, suffice to say, I'm going to tell you this carefully. The Jiangsu Chamber is a group in the Markham area, right in the middle of these ridings, Markham Thornhill, Markham Unionville, and it is overtly connected to China's United Front Work Department. In its own documents, it is. The Globe and Mail reported this. I reported this. It is also, people can, they can find pictures of, I'm just going to say, well, I'll name one. Former conservative senator Victor O signing a document pledging his allegiance to the United Front Work Department. Victor O is an honorary director of the Jiangsu Chamber. There are other litigious Canadian politicians connected to that entity. And so I'll add this because this is important. Hodgson's Electoral District Association president, who was on this Jiangsu Chamber, my Diaspora sources strongly indicate this guy, who is now boss of Hodgson's Riding Association, pressured John McCallum, who is no longer with us, to go out and have his press conferences saying, let's free Man Wanzhou. So there's a couple of through lines I've kind of thrown out there that if I was stepping back and writing a 2,000-word story, I can timeline it and say there's a bunch of Chinese suspicious activity surrounding Michael Ma, surrounding Hodgson, surrounding Hodgson's predecessor, Mary Ng, surrounding a bunch of other litigious people that I'm not going to talk about today.
This is the problem with diaspora politics. I say this as someone who's been involved with diaspora politics, who has watched it up close from the inside. It can get very, very questionable, very compromising. It leads to all kinds of questions of loyalty.
Absolutely. And what the way to solve that is foreign agent registry, so that we're not throwing people that shouldn't be thrown into a kind of a tainted bucket. Let's not blame people for showing up at a photo where there happens to be some guy that's under investigation from the RCMP in connection to money laundering for fentanyl, which occurs in Markham, by the way, and I'll leave it at that. Let's get a foreign
If I
foreign agent registry in place. Mark Carney doesn't have one in place yet. The story I broke today shows a connection to people related to Michael Ma who were against the foreign agent registry. We can't get away from that.
And when did the law to bring in the foreign agent registry pass? That was how many months ago? How many years ago?
I believe 18 months should be the count. This was under Justin Trudeau, our new leader, Prime Minister.
And that was only under duress.
It was under duress, and if you actually enforce it and implement it, I believe Canada will face a backlash from Beijing, which just adds to that pot that I'm throwing a bunch of things in. What I'm saying, Brian, is diaspora politics involves the pressure on Canadian political leaders to adopt platforms that will be friendly to original country of diaspora. Let me add one more thing that I forgot. I reported again in 2023, based on CSIS documents, that Chinese Communist Party proxies sought to influence the conservative 2022 leadership race. They wanted a leader that was more friendly to Beijing than Aaron O'Toole had been. So I think there's a number of proxy groups that were trying to help elect the new leader for the conservatives. And I think Pierre Poilievre was the one they hated. They didn't want him to be in place.
I actually can't think of who would have been in that group that would have fit that
I
mold.
can.
Okay.
I'm comfortable to say that Senator Victor O and a number of what I will assert are known Chinese Communist Party proxies were supporting Patrick Brown. There was also the sense that there could be a complex favoritism for Charest from Quebec going on in this
Well, first off,
complexity.
Charest was not going to win.
No, he wasn't.
Um, as much as I've known Jean a long time back to when he was opposition leader in Quebec, but he was never going to win, and quite frankly, neither was Patrick Brown.
Yeah, I'm
But
not saying
you,
that it
you know,
was
like
a good.
if you said to me that the Modi government wanted Patrick Brown to win, I'd be like, well, yeah, um, but I don't see
Brian,
the Chinese play there.
all I'm telling you is, I can, if we're doing a screen share, I can pull up a document saying, the party was targeted in 2022,
No, I'm
and
not doubting you. I'm just saying they may be working on bad intel sometimes.
well, I don't think it was a very. Let me answer you this way. I don't think I'm not saying they had a strong chance of implementing someone like Patrick Brown. I'm saying that Victor O and known Chinese Communist Party proxies were supporting Patrick Brown, and a document from CSIS says there was an effort. I'll also say, look, we're if Kevin Vaughan is correct, and I'm not saying he is, if he is the person from the Liberal Party that was targeted by some unidentified foreign regime that didn't want some liberal candidate to win. If Kevin Vaughan, is correct and he thinks it's him, I think there's a good chance it's him. Obviously, it wasn't successful, and the people that were doing it had their timeline all messed up if they were targeting Kevin Vaughan.
For people that don't know, Kevin Vaughan, former independent MP, first elected as a liberal. You know, I know Kevin. I see Kevin around Toronto. I believe that he was targeted. I
I do.
believe that he was the target of a plot by China to try and undermine him because of his views. Ethnically Chinese, came to Canada through Vietnam and outspoken against the regime. Of course, they didn't want him in. Let me end on an area where your world and mine collide, and
Okay.
that is on the politics of trade. We keep hearing, well, we've got to pivot away from the United States, so let's go to China. That's the next biggest economy. Um, and there's a lot of people that say, yes, well, Donald Trump is being mean to us. Let's work with China. Um, I go back more than 20 years. Dalton McGuinty trying to bring in the green energy plan in Ontario. We're going to partner with Chinese companies, and we're going to make a lot of solar panels here in Ontario. Well, guess what happened? All the technology that was developed here for building those solar panels was stolen, taken back to China, and the plants here were shut down. Um, in my view, you can't do free trade with China, but that seems to be the thinking of a lot of people who are just angry at the United States now and say, "Yeah, but we can partner with Beijing. It's going to be great." In my view, Sam, and you tell me your thoughts, if we attempt to do that, we're just going to have Beijing selling us everything they can and them buying nothing from us.
Absolutely, Brian. We probably agree 99.9% on this file. Look at what's happening in Germany. A lot of their industrialists were the same, mode you're talking about of the past 20 years, the Jean Chrétien mode. Let's increase, trade with China. Once you do, even if you get access to their market with your vehicle companies, they steal your technology, and when they've got it, they push you out. And I'm not even talking about the spyware they're installing in, Huawei, or any amount of, now they're looking at, medical devices in hospitals and talking about how China wants to I could go on and on. It's a suicidal play to do more trade with China. And Brian, I'll tell you this. Washington is being very unkind right now to much of the world. At the same time, they know things about how close I believe we are to sort of World War III scenarios a lot more than, people that are feeling like elbows up and mean Donald Trump. I'm not saying he's being a nice guy. I'm saying they've got some very serious plans. They're trying to assign their supply lines and their military might where they think it will serve them in the next 10 years. And if Canada doesn't align with that, and we were left out of some new sort of silicon supply chain for some reason that other countries can get along with the states and we can't. So I just think Mark Carney saying it'll never be the same with the states. I don't buy that. We can be back to being best allies. And I'm not saying bend over and let them do what they want with us. I'm saying let's build ourselves up, but going into bed with China is suicidal.
Yeah, well, yeah, you and I are simpatico on that. I said I'd leave it at that, but you mentioned the EV, so I got to ask you because I keep getting the pressure from Western Canada. Your EV sector doesn't matter, like it doesn't even exist. Just let all the Chinese EVs in. Um, I've got so many issues with that, from the fact that it would undermine our existing auto industry, not the EV, but if you're selling cars for $12,500, doesn't matter if they're EVs or otherwise, people are going to buy them and they're subsidized all to hell by China. And all of a sudden, we're going to see auto jobs leaving here. The Americans are going to just shut their market to us. But beyond that, these are spy vehicles. And
Absolutely.
why would we let them into our country?
Absolutely. You hit the two main points there. Market control, dumping. They'll kill our market if we let their vehicles in. And spyware, they'll be collecting silently off you if you buy that car, before things get bad in the world. I'm talking about a possible war in Taiwan. But if a war, God forbid, if a war happens in Taiwan, you're going to see the car you bought start to, I think, go berserk. China is in our
Maybe not
systems,
work.
maybe not work. The same as the BC Ferries deal. They look, I'm Brian. Sometimes it sounds like wacky conspiracy theory, but it's not. The American government knows China is buried within their systems deeper than they even know, and they know a lot more than Canada and the Canadian government.
Yeah, we've got some Canadians saying, "Oh, we can't buy the F-35s because they've got a kill switch that'll stop the planes from defending North America." And yet we're willing to buy Chinese cars, Chinese ferries, Chinese everything, and we know they've got that ability.
They have that ability, and I don't even need to get into, the other stuff that I report on when I get into the drug file and how the American government now believes a weapon of mass destruction called fentanyl is intentionally used by China. So I could go on and on and on.
You and I should get together and talk sometime. It's not really in either of our bailiwicks, but it'd be fun, about the Turtle Island Liberation Front, because I just love
Yeah.
that name. And we all watched as the Attorney General's office in Southern California and the FBI uh, revealed that there was going to be a terrorist plot by crazy left wing groups that were testing bombs in the Lucerne Valley in California. Yeah, we'll do more of these
I'm I'm I'm
later on.
I'm up for that, and I'll say this: I saw your post about you unfortunately running into these wild left and Islamist groups in Toronto. Absolutely, you'll find some of those Turtle Island types that are useful idiots for Iranian intelligence. I believe so. Yeah, let's do a New Year's talk or something on that.
All right, we'll talk again in the new year. Merry Christmas to you and yours, and we'll talk in the new year. Sam, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.